everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of Parks and Recreation Commission, Wednesday, March 27th. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Feck,
Here.
Vice Chair McGill,
Here.
Commissioner Aldana,
Present.
Commissioner Chang,
Present.
Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Lesner-Buxton, Commissioner Unander LaBerge.
All right, thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Chair Effect, no changes to the agenda.
Okay. And then as far as written public comment, I know we did receive a letter, but that was in regards to an agenda item. I didn't see anything else. Okay. We will go on to public comment. So any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. The total amount of time for public comment will be 15 minutes. Again, this is something that's not agenda related. I don't have any speaker slips for that, but is there anybody online?
No one is online.
Okay, thank you. And next up, we have a youth council report. So I'll turn over the floor to you.
Chair Effect, we have Cindy Zavala from the Youth Council for today's report.
Okay, welcome.
Good afternoon, Parks and Recreation Committee, Commission, sorry. My name is Cindy Zavala, and I would like to provide you guys an update on Youth Council activities. I'd like to begin with our safe firearm storage ordinance and our continuation of work. A year since the requested presentation from Moms Demand Action, the Youth Council presented our draft of the safe firearms ordinance to the City Council on March 5th, 2023. The ordinance received overwhelming support from the community and was passed unanimously. This process was eye-opening for our youth council because it taught us the power of leadership, government process, and how we can all come together to save lives in our community. We want to thank the commission for being part of this process, as well as the city staff for supporting us and giving us the tools to succeed. This is very important for the youth council, that we can continue to bring awareness to the safe storage of firearms. The ordinance was the first step in keeping our community safe. Our chair and ad hoc subcommittee chair have recently given an interview with KSBY in the hopes that we will help raise awareness. We will continue to work closely with the police department and Moms Demand Action for events such as gun locket giveaways. We are also happy to provide an update on the 2024 Youth Speak Out and the status of the Fund for Santa Barbara Youth Make Change grant. Along with 6 other groups in the South County area, the Youth Council was selected to receive a grant of $1,880. This funding will support our upcoming Youth Speak Out event themed Teens for Tomorrow. We are so excited to be hosting this event at the Palm Park Beach House on Saturday, April 13th, between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Similar to our event last year, the Santa Barbara Youth Council is bringing together local teens and local leaders. Confirmed speakers are Suzanne Grimsey with County Behavior Wellness, Chief Gordon, Hillary Allen with Sustainability and Resilience Department, and Victoria Strong of the Gwendolyn Foundation. With the help of our adult leaders, we will host 5 roundtable style discussions on the topics such as mental wellness, public safety, sustainability, inclusivity and diversity, and lastly, the importance of community and civic engagement. I'd also like to give an update on our recruitment plan. During our last update, the commission suggested that the Youth Council revisit our strategy to recruit members from alternative communities or alternative high school positions. Our strategy we have developed is to ask teachers directly and staff from these schools to nominate students and apply so that we can get in contact with them and our advisor as well. Our advisor will continue to reach out to these schools directly to give presentations. Although most schools are currently on spring break, our youth council members have continued to pass recruitment information along to other youth groups we participate in. We also continue to develop new strategies each year and try to use our Instagram platform as much as possible to keep students up to date on our activities. Lastly, the Youth Council worked hard to promote the Harriet Miller Youth Leadership Award in January and February. We received strong applications and appointed subcommittees to meet and review and select a winner. Applications were kept entirely anonymous, and during the process, we would like to congratulate Ellie Cuevas one more time for being awarded this year's scholarship and thank the downtown organization for continuing to partner with us for this award. Parks and Recreation Commission, thank you for your time. Can I answer any questions that you guys may have?
Awesome. Thank you for that update. We'll do Vice Chair McGill.
I don't have any questions, but I would just really like to congratulate you once again on the firearms ordinance. It was a great process from start to finish, and I was really pleased that it went through with, as I knew it would, sailed through with flying colors, and also congratulate you on the grant award for the Speak Out. I think, I hope you can really drum up huge attendance, because I think that's an important it's an important thing that you're doing, as always, and also glad you're taking on board the recruitment conversation, and congratulations to the Harriet Miller winner. So thanks again for a great presentation and a great job.
Chair Beck and Commission, thank you so much for your time.
Got a couple more questions for you. Commissioner Aldana.
Yes, I'd just like to thank you for your work, and the rest of the council also, and thank you for being part of the process also. Awesome work.
And Commissioner Clark.
I just want to echo our thanks for following up on something that we requested in the reach out to alternative schools. And thanks for coming on spring break.
Yes, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, great work. Definitely awesome to see all the stuff that you guys are doing. So enjoy the rest of your spring break. Thank you. All right, so we will move to Commissioner Committee assignment reports. I'll start from my left, Commissioner Clark.
I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee meeting for this month, and we'll talk about those agenda items.
Okay, Commissioner Chang.
I don't believe there was a meeting. If there was, I didn't get an email.
Okay, no worries. Vice Chair McGill.
We had a Park Foundation meeting last week that I attended. It was a pretty standard meeting. We did approve disbursement of donation funds for the summer fund program for this year.
All right, Commissioner Aldana.
Nothing to report.
And then Commissioner Lesner-Buxton.
Nothing to report.
Okay, and I also have nothing to report, so. All right, thanks, everyone. Commission and staff communications. Don't think we have anything. Are there any ceremonial items this month?
There are no ceremonial items this month.
Okay. So I've got a couple consent items to go through. There was just a summary of council actions. That's for information, so hopefully everyone was able to read that. And then we do have a recommendation that the commission waive the reading and approve the minutes of the regular meeting of February 28th, 2024. May I have a motion and a second on that? Vice Chair McGill.
I'll move approve.
I'll second.
All right, may I have a vote? Make sure everyone lock their votes in. Make sure your button's blue. All right, that's approved. And that takes us to the street trees.
Good afternoon, Chair Feck and Commissioners. The first Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove a Chinese elm located in the front setback of the property at 335 Rosario Drive. The applicant listed considerable maintenance issues as well as a history of limb failures as the driving rationale for the tree removal request. The committee reviewed the application. We took a critical look at the tree on site. They noted the tree as being in fair condition overall. I think most of the comments pertain to sort of the legginess, or what we would call overextension of limbs, really long spreading branches from the tree canopy. Some of that is attributed to the failure, as well as just maintenance over the years, the tree getting large. The discussion revolved around the maintenance issues as well as the pattern of failure. There was consensus amongst the committee members that the tree still had value, and through continued maintenance could be retained. Essentially, the comments were to focus more on what we would call crown reduction, where you reduce that branch length throughout to eliminate the long length of limbs, which is a major contributing factor to failure. After review, the committee made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the Chinese elm at 335 Rosario Drive.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the commission about this tree? No? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, Vice Chair McGill. I was like, I saw you guys. Okay.
I had a long look at this tree and, read the supplemental information as well. And I guess I noted from the arborist's letter that certainly the arborists view that limb failures could continue to be a problem. But that came, when I looked at the tree, what struck me, and I have a question around this, is that to meaningfully reduce the length of the limbs would, I mean, you talked about the legginess, would significantly reduce the canopy. And I kind of walked away thinking maybe this is going to end up looking like a Dr. Seuss tree. What was that? So my question around that is, how, with this particular tree, I mean, how does it leaf back out again? I mean, what happens once you cut it back? Do you regain density of canopy, or is it kind of spindly branches and tufts of leaves?
Chair Feck, Commissioner McGill, I think when a Chinese elm in particular is reduced, you get like a tufted growth response where the cut was made. So this species doesn't do what some trees do, where you'll see a lot of new buds break dormancy, like kind of all throughout the branch and kind of fill in. So most of the growth is kind of what we would call terminal, or on the branch ends. So if those reduction cuts were made back to, larger, like 2 to 3 inch diameter wood, you would expect to see like a big tuft of growth there, which could be managed, but it would take some time, and again, like pretty considerable maintenance intervals in order to restore canopy over time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, I had two questions. Looking at the list of maintenance and failure costs that the owner incurred over the past, since 2012, I believe it was, were any of those large maintenance pieces of work crown reduction? Can you tell by looking at the tree? Because it just listed dates and costs. It didn't say what was done.
Chair Feck and Commissioner Clark, I think it's difficult to say. We're speculating a little bit on past maintenance practices. If you go back and look at like a Google Street View, the canopy was kind of always similar size and scale. So I think there's been a lot of thinning, certainly some reduction, and you could see that during our site visit, that they were making small reduction cuts. I think in order to sort of right the ship, you would just have to make much larger reduction cuts, which the arborist did a pretty good job of pointing out in the supplemental letter that they provided.
Okay. And then my other question was, I know there's a certain percentage of a tree that you can legally prune. Would the amount of reduction this would require to make it safe exceed the legally allowed percentage of reduction?
Chair Feck and Commissioner Clark, that's a great question. So the Preservation of Trees Ordinance does essentially limit the amount of work that can be done. It's kind of like that 25% live foliage, sort of like from a best management practice. But within that ordinance, there's what they call a lawful significant alteration sort of exemption. That's not the right verbiage, but with a written arborist report, which the letter technically would satisfy, I think, more than satisfy, we can grant property owners and contractors the ability to do work that exceeds that annual definition of significant alteration. So
Okay.
there is a mechanism in place where you can do, quite a bit more. Say like not this tree, but say a large tree failed and a large section of it was missing, and a considerable amount of work was needed to preserve the tree. They would submit a report to us, we would review it, and then give them an exemption to allow them to do work that exceeds the sort of the annual limitations for setback pruning.
Okay, and then within that scope of a permitted allowance, are they able to do a crown reduction in such a way that it would be one and done, or would we be looking at another 12 years of cuts? If they did a huge giant cut and they were permitted to do so, would it fix it for a while?
Chair Feck and Commissioner Clark, I think when you look at the challenges of Chinese elm, they can grow probably 3 feet a year on average, like small twig growth, like just extension. So it definitely wouldn't be a one and done. Reducing the canopy would increase the need for maintenance in the short and long term until you had, essentially restoration of the canopy.
Commissioner Chang.
This is a two-parter. I'm really curious, can you just help me evaluate the claim that the arborist makes that the elm is in poor condition due to limb loss and infection?
Chair Feck, Commissioner Chang, there was definitely reference to elm anthracnose, which is something that we do see. Over time, that can increase the probability of limb failure. We didn't see a lot of that on site. That's not to say that it doesn't exist within the canopy, but it's at a pretty low level, I think, in terms of the disease compared to what we see in other Chinese elms throughout town.
Okay, got it, thank you. And I guess a follow-up to that is, that evaluation, how does that interact with kind of our principle of upholding good forest management?
Chair Feck, Commissioner Chang, I think from the committee's perspective, there was still value in the tree. The tree could be maintained in such a way that it warranted retention. The commission could certainly make an alternative finding that could support removal.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I got one.
Okay, Commissioner Aldana.
If the tree was to be cut down, how many trees would replace it?
Chair Feck, Commissioner Aldana, if the commission if the commission approved the removal, they would determine the number of trees to be required as planting as a condition of approval.
Vice Chair McGill.
I was going to say, but in the application, they're asking to replace it with one.
Okay, I don't have any speaker slips on this, but is there anyone online that's wishing to speak about this tree?
No, Chair Feck, there's no one online.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't have any more comments or questions. Does anyone want to make a motion on this?
Okay, I'm just going to throw it out there. I looked at this one longer than I probably look at most when I'm doing my drive-bys. And I was concerned about what that level of pruning was going to actually do and what the level of maintenance was going to be going forward. I was concerned about the length of the limbs. I mean, it is quite impressive how long those limbs are and where some of them are overhanging. And I noted the asymmetry, and then that was before we got this. And I note there's three limb failures in 2023, which seems like a lot. With all of that, I mean, it is kind of a cool tree in its own right, but I am going to make a motion that we disagree with the stack in this instance, and that we approve the removal of the Chinese elm at Rosario Drive on the condition that we replace it with I'm going to say appropriate canopy tree. I mean, I don't, the application is designated street tree in Parkway, but I would say a canopy tree capable, in consultation with you, are capable of achieving 25 feet or whatever the appropriate number would be. I hadn't thought that one through.
Is there any other discussion now that that's been thrown out there?
I would second that so we could continue the discussion.
Okay, any discussion? Commissioner
Did you-
Clark?
Did you say a finding? It's setback, right? Yeah.
It's a setback tree, right? Well, it could either be principles of good forest management just because of the history of limb failures and the extensive renovation that this tree would require, or the regard for safety of persons. I would say it's an A and an E.
Chair Feck, just one point of clarification in the motion. It sounds like you're conditioning a setback tree rather than a street tree.
I'm open to either, quite honestly.
It says setback tree on the agenda.
Well,
Is this a street? It says it's a setback tree.
right, but your condition for a new tree, the applicant expressed a desire to plant a street tree, and the way you phrased the motion, it sounded like you were requiring a tree to be planted back within the front setback. So I just wanted to clarify
Oh, I would
if it's going to be
say-
a street tree or a setback
Okay,
tree as
okay.
part of the motion.
Yeah, as part of the, okay, how do we do this, right? I would say either a setback or a street tree, because you may not want a street, I'm just concerned that you may not want a street tree because of the obligations that come with a street tree. So I would say either setback or street tree with the determination to be
So-
made by the city arborist.
Chair Feck, Commissioner McGill, I think that some of the concern is the parkway is rather narrow on this street.
Yeah, and street trees come with obligations that I didn't really necessarily want to lumber the city with.
And what is a designated street tree?
Chair Feck, Commissioner Aldana, it's the lemon bottle brush. There were a few on the street. They're pretty interesting little trees.
Okay, well, we do have a motion and we do have a second. We have had discussion. So I think we're prepared to vote. Okay, yeah, let's do a vote. Okay, that one has passed as approval of removal. Okay, we can go to the next one.
Chair Feck and Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove a Mexican fan palm located within the front setback of the property at 138 Santa Rosa Place. The applicant expressed the desire to remove the Mexican fan palm due to essentially maintenance concerns that also revolved around safety, specifically the fronds falling from the tree, impacting their property and neighboring residences in the public street. They did not list a replacement tree as an option on the application, but they did point out that they had planted a gold medallion tree in the front setback of their property a couple years ago, and with the intent on that tree filling in that space over time. The committee reviewed the tree, discussed the rationale in the application. They noted the tree was in good health. Fronds fall from palm trees, and there was consensus that that wasn't solid rationale to support removal. And after review, made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the fan palm at 138 Santa Rosa Place. They did comment as well that the palm and the gold medallion could coexist.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this tree from the commission? Okay. Okay, Vice Chair McGill?
I mean, I guess I just have a consistency question. And I know that it's never completely black and white in terms of consistency, but I am aware of at least one instance in a very similar circumstance in the last 5-6 years where a tree with kind of a similar MO, shall we say, it's a tree I know well, was conditionally approved with the condition of planting a canopy tree. And I'm just wondering what the distinction would be and how you make that differentiation.
Chair Feck and Commissioner McGill, I think when they looked at the property, in relation to the street and the health and value that the palm contributed to the site, there was group consensus that there wasn't a finding that supported its removal at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Clark?
Can I answer that question? At least in my mind, what differentiates it to me, or do we have to wait for discussion?
Well, we have one more question, so maybe we'll do that, and then we'll go back to the discussion. Commissioner Chang?
Do we have any data around like the incidence of fronds hitting people in general across SB?
Chair Feck, Commissioner Chang, we do not. There may be limited incidents of reports to like the city's risk management division if it involved like a public tree, but we would have no way of knowing, with the thousands of private palms, how often something like that happens.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any questions? Otherwise, I do have a speaker slip. All right, we do have a request to speak. Mary Jane Headley, if you want to come forward. You will have 2 minutes to speak. There'll be a timer right in front of you, so you'll be able to keep track of your time. Okay. And she'll start it for you, so go ahead and start when you see the clock.
Well, I live here, and the tree was a volunteer tree 35 years ago, and we had no idea how tall it would get, and the fronds are now just, because of the thatching, we just had a dump, and they were piled high in front of us. And so the expense, number one, getting rid of all the fronds, that's our expense. Number two, our neighbors, and I think I just gave a new picture 2 days ago from the wind, and a frond did fly into our neighbor's yard, and they have an 11-month-old. So there is concern about that. People park in front of our house all the time because it's public parking. And some of the fronds from the queen palms on our street have cracked windshields. And so whose liability is that? Am I going to be paying for my neighbor's solar panels if the fronds are now flying all over because the tree's just going to get taller? And also, it's a little bit about a scale with my house. I think the golden medallion tree we planted, which was just 30 feet and then has a canopy, not only is more in scale with the house and the neighborhood, but also will provide more shade for the front of our house, which faces west, I believe. We're almost west. So, I mean, there's just concerns. I mean, is out of scale right now, and there's liability issues that I guess I'm going to be responsible for. If it hurts somebody or cracks a window and it's damaged trees on my property when the fronds go flying around and they're on top of the roof, and, you know, we're not getting younger. We don't really want to climb up on the roof all the time. So if there's any questions, thank you.
Thank you for being here and speaking. Are there any questions or more comments from the commission? Okay. I know that maybe we can go to the discussion now. Commissioner Clark?
I think your question earlier, Kathy, was you were asking why would we spare one palm and not another, and what's the difference between this one and other ones? And, you know, Mr. Slack said it was, you know, it's basically different because you have to consider the environment of the trees and in the background. And there was when I was a new commissioner, one of, I think Tim Downey at one point started talking about the cadence of the palms, and that really made an impression with me. So when you're walking down a street and you look up and you see a tree, it's kind of a melody. You know, the palms are marching down the street, and that's our iconic view of Santa Barbara in our heads. And so I think, to me, it's the cadence of the palm that makes a difference. That's how I would differentiate it. You either feel it or you don't. The street has it or it doesn't.
Commissioner Aldana.
I would like to go as far as like Kathy did and throw it out there. And I would disagree with the street tree committee and approve for the palm to be cut down.
Okay. Is that is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Got a motion. Any discussion? Okay, Commissioner Chang?
I'll second.
Okay. Was that motion appropriate, and are we missing anything within that motion?
Chair,
Need a
effect,
finding?
Finding, yeah, thank you.
Okay, we need a finding. Do you want to? We need a finding.
Do you want me to make the motion?
Here's your finding. That regard for the safety of the persons or property dictates the removal. Do you want the orders? Yeah, finding E. Is that sufficient?
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? Commissioner Clark?
So I guess the motion is before us to cut down this palm tree because it drops fronds and is a liability. So before you vote, I just want you to think about all of the trees across the city that drop fronds or leaves, are messy and sometimes costly. And just think of precedent and what you're saying yes to before you vote. I have a tree that's a pain, and it's a hassle for me. I have to spend a lot of money with maintenance. I worry if it's going to drop a branch, you know, but I try to take care of it. So just something for consideration.
Okay.
Commissioner Chang?
Yeah, I don't know if we're supposed to compare this to prior cases, but I like this one a lot more. I'm more willing to vote in favor of this one because there's clear evidence that it's sort of damaging things, as opposed to the prior one. There was a lot of conflict, disagreement between the arborists. So in that sense, you know, like there's a finding. There's very clearly a finding.
Commissioner Aldana?
Yes, a few months back, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned that no more palms will be planted because there's no value or something of that nature?
Chair,
You know, a shade value?
Commissioner Aldana, we'll still continue planting palms. We're a coastal beach community, so it's certainly part of the identity, I think, of the city. But it's true that in terms of our street tree planting efforts, that we're making a big push to plant more shade trees than palm trees. And we've had lots of discussions about the the pros and cons, especially the environmental benefits, you know, when you look at a palm tree versus a shade tree. So we still will use them in certain areas where it's appropriate, but yeah, internally the program's pretty motivated to increase shade on streets and in the parks.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Clark.
So just a question. So you're looking at finding E, which is safety of personal persons dictate removal, is that correct? Okay, so have you driven through Santa Barbara following a windstorm or a wind event? Have you seen fronds down? Do you believe that all of those palm trees should be cut down? Okay.
All of them, no, but this one, yes.
Vice Chair McGill.
No, I'm just, I mean, I have struggled with this one a little bit because of the consistency issue as much as anything. But it is reasonably far away from the house, and it is correct that fronds are part of the deal with palm trees, and that you have to skirt them every 2 to 3 years. I mean, that's just kind of part of the deal, having just done it myself this year. And it's, you know, there's validity to the question, what constitutes a need to cut something down, because there's fronds coming down all over town every day. And mostly they don't come off dramatically, even in a winter. They kind of slide down for the most part, but in my rather extensive experience with them.
Commissioner Chang.
Yeah, and sort of, I guess, just addressing that, if there was a specific tree that had repeated testimony over the years that it was damaging property or was close to damaging people, then yes, I would support cutting that tree down. And so this is a specific tree that is clearly an issue. The other ones, maybe not so much. So it's not a general indictment of palm trees, despite my personal dislike of them. It's just, this tree is clearly an issue.
All right, I don't see any other requests to speak. We do have a motion, we do have a second. So just kind of reemphasizing that the motion was to approve the removal. So that would be what the vote is for. So when you are voting, you would be voting yes or no to approving the removal of the tree. So because I don't have any more people, there's nobody online, correct?
No, there's no one online.
Okay, so I think we're able to vote. So again, it would be in agreeance of removing the tree. Okay, so it has been approved for removal. And I think just because the resident is here, do you understand the next steps? Okay. He'll call you. Okay, thank you. All right. All right, moving on.
Chair Feck and Commissioners, the next Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove a Norfolk Island pine located within the front setback at 412 Dibley Avenue. The applicant expressed a desire to remove the tree due to safety concerns, fear of loss of limb, potential tree failure, some maintenance considerations, and then there was noted concerns with damage to the eave of the home, which is quite close to the trunk of the tree, and then speculation that the foundation of the property could be compromised by the tree. It is a very small front setback, and the tree is quite large if you're able to make a site visit. The committee reviewed the reasons listed on the application, discussed the tree on site, noted it was a particularly nice specimen of Norfolk Island pine, pretty striking and considerable on the street as well, and from great distances. The concerns with maintenance, Norfolk Island pine is actually a pretty low maintenance tree, and those were comments from the committee. They did say that it could benefit from just some routine pruning, but they noted no real significant concerns within the canopy. There is some, the trunk is close to the eave, but again, comments from them, given the tree's age, distance from the eave of the house, the probability of any real damage is very, very low. And then in addition to concerns with the foundation, I had asked the applicant in advance of the meeting if they had any, identifiable documentation that supported that. They didn't. And I think that the committee's comments there were that given that there wasn't any evidence, it was hard to objectively evaluate that. And given the tree's coexistence with the building for all of these decades, that it was probably relatively unlikely to be happening if they haven't already observed issues. And after review, they made a recommendation to deny the request for the removal of the Norfolk Island pine at 412 Dibley Avenue.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments on this tree from the commission? Commissioner Chang.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, hold on
Oh,
1 second.
okay.
Is there anybody on the phone to speak? I don't have any speaker slips, so.
There is no one online.
Okay. All right, so now, unless anyone else has any comments or questions, we can move to a motion.
I will move to follow the recommendation of the committee and deny the removal of this tree.
Okay, I'll second that. Is there any discussion? All right, let's go to a vote, please. All right, thank you. That one is to deny the removal. All right, now De La Guerra Plaza.
And Chair Feck and Commissioners, the last Street Tree Advisory Committee recommendation for review is a request to remove 49 various trees located within the De La Guerra Plaza area. That actually contains the Stork Placida, the plaza out in front of City Hall, also including right in front of the old News Press building, and then the front of City Hall, which is actually on the Anacapa side of the building. You'll note on the application that there were 52 trees originally proposed for removal. That's been reduced to 49. We'll walk through that in a little bit. This is a really large city-initiated project of great size and scale. We've invited project manager Brad Hess to give a pretty comprehensive presentation on the De La Guerra revitalization project effort, and then after that we'll jump back and take a look at the tree review and the recommendation from the committee.
Sounds good.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sorry. Thank you very much for having us. It's a privilege to be here to actually talk about this. I love talking about this, so it's a great opportunity to not only inform you, but inform the public. We're here to discuss the trees, clearly, and we will come back to that, but we want to go through really the project as a whole to give you the context in which we're asking for these tree removals, which hopefully will make sense as you hear the magnitude of the project. Am I going down? Good. So here's our agenda for the day. Project history and timeline. This is, believe it or not, 5 years into this project. On March 9th, 2019, it was our first community outreach meeting that created the baseline from which the design team and the advisory committee went from. This has been a design through committees, primarily the advisory committee. We've had 2 members which was made up of 2 members of HLC, 2 members of Parks and Recreation, 2 members from City Council, 2 from Planning Commission, and the executive director for the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation. We've also had some other committees, which I'll show you in just a bit. The project site, the first real unanimous decision that the advisory committee made was to make this a pedestrian-only space. It's really designed in their guidance and in our minds to really celebrate the center of town, highlight the historic buildings, create a space that's incredibly flexible and beautiful again. Fourth was the purpose. We want to activate this space again. We want to make it, as I said, flexible. We want to honor everything that happened in this space and create a true civic plaza for our community. The tradition, if you go really anywhere internationally, virtually all of the plazas have an enclosed space that surround the plazas, whether it's European, South American, or Mexican, they're all enclosed. This one also was enclosed long ago, and so we'd like to bring that back. And lastly, we've got a lot of features to enhance the overall experience and really draw people into the space. So just a recap of the process, I'm definitely not going through this slide, but just wanted to point out that the design has not been created in a vacuum over the last 5 years. It's really been vetted by a number of groups and the community. These have been our working committees. We've, as I just said, the advisory committee, but we've also had an art subcommittee that's continuing to work. We had a surface materials committee, and we had an architecture subcommittee. The purpose statement that really guided the process for the advisory committee reads, De La Guerra Plaza celebrates and honors the historic heart of our city and provides the flexibility to serve our community's diverse social, cultural, historic, economic, and environmental vitality. So these 5 vitalities are really the prism through which all of the ideas, and there were many, it's the prism through which all of those ideas were considered as to whether they would meet those. I'm going to pass it along to Debbie Rudd, who is one of our principal architects on the design team for RRM Design Group.
So when we start designing these plazas, we start with some key design principles. And as we go through this concept plan today, you'll see how we've incorporated some of these, framing the plaza with buildings and activity, introducing activity nodes, looking for a water feature, introducing a water feature, and creating ample seating throughout the plaza. So to orient you, the top of the side is Anacapa Street, the bottom is State. This plaza is surrounded by 4 key historic buildings. We have Casa de la Guerra on the left, the Botan La Placida building on the bottom, City Hall on the top, and what we've been referring to as the News Press building, now we are referring to it as 715 Anacapa Street. So really nice backdrop for this plaza. Looking at it quickly, when you're looking from the Casa towards the News Press, the next slide has us looking from the News Press back towards the Casa. So we'd like to give you a quick overview of the key elements of the plaza. And to start off, the red line is kind of our extension of work. It's our boundary. It goes all the way to Anacapa, all the way to State. There are a few key elements. Early decisions, one was to eliminate traffic from most of that, and including De La Guerra Street. So most of De La Guerra Street will be closed to traffic. The plaza will be all one level now, and there will not be the grass. We've instead incorporated more trees and shade to give it that soft feeling that we wanted. We wanted to create a space that was beautiful, but also maximize the flexibility so that we can accommodate events. So you can see the center of the site is quite open, and then the edges are what activate. We have the shade and the outdoor seating and some activity areas on the edges. We also wanted to honor these historic buildings, so we were careful to where we place trees, not to block the historic buildings too much. And the pavilion that Brad had mentioned was a key element to help frame the plaza. I don't know if you have the mouse, but you can kind of point at where that pavilion building is. We also are adding restrooms and outdoor dining and ample seating.
So the next 3 slides are really going to talk about the surface materials that we have proposed for the site. can see that there's sandstone, brick, and flagstone. Those are the three materials. One thing we learned early on is we really, other than aesthetic purposes, using permeable pavers was not going to help us. There's no percolation in the soil at all. Top 19 feet is basically clay. So all the water will be distributed and directed to either dry wells or cisterns, and the plan is to use that water for irrigation when it's available. Second thing is, with a pedestrian-only space, you still need vehicles in there. So all of the surface materials will be required to be able to handle a 60,000-pound emergency vehicle. So it's got a pretty high bar to meet. So looking at the surface materials a little more carefully, the first one is in the upper left, it's brick, and the bottom right is brick. So as you can imagine, there's just a ton of utilities in De La Guerra Street, as well as in around the plaza itself. One of the reasons that the plaza, it looks a little bit more run down is that as things have been repaired, they patch it up with different colored concrete or different colored asphalt. And so what we're going to be doing, and it's a major project within this project, is a utility consolidation and coordination effort, so that the utilities will continue to run under De La Guerra Street, but then they will be in that band of brick, as you see, that sort of mimics the current road. The second is the flagstone. That's going to be in the center area, highlighted in the upper right. It'll be grouted sandstone, but it'll also be banded with sandstone. That will all be set on a concrete pad, as will the sandstone. So we are considering that more permanent, where we're hoping not to have to dig that up. And lastly is the grouted sandstone. So in El Paseo, you've got this lovely sandstone, and then it continues down the street of Spain. We will continue that look across De La Guerra Street in front of City Hall over toward 715 Anacapa LLC and down Stork Placita to State Street.
The blue circles show where the different planters, the tree planters, will be. And these will be both planters and seeding opportunities, and they'll have tile on the vertical surface of the planter. You can see the tile pattern on the right-hand corner of the slide. And these raised planters create green edges, provide shade, and really activate the edges. The planting character we're striving for is really capturing the quintessential Santa Barbara character, proposing traditional Santa Barbara low maintenance and low water use planting. Public art was an important component both to the community when we did outreach and as well to the advisory committee. The public art creatively integrates art and history throughout the plaza. So rather than just one location for art, we really are pulling it all the way through the plaza. And there are 3 primary locations for art, and there's an overarching theme for all the art. The overarching theme is the earth, water, fire, and air. And the 3 locations are medallions in the paving that's flush with the paving, a seating area for children and families, and the Chumash mosaic. And I'll go through in the next couple slides some more detail on that. So first are the medallions. The purple dots represent medallions that would be flush to the paving. And the concept is, as you're walking down State Street, you would see a medallion in the paving, it would catch your eye, you would look up, you would see more medallions, and it would pull you into the plaza and throughout the plaza. Then the orange dots are larger medallions, and these are opportunities to celebrate the history of the plaza. The orange square or rectangle is where we're suggesting the family gathering node. This is a passive activity zone to attract families and children. There won't be like a play structure, but there'll be some stones, different sized stones, small ones for children to sit on, larger ones, wider ones that people can picnic on, and the artist would integrate art within this space. And the last one is in the heart of the plaza. This has been reserved for the Chumash mosaic, and it also has a dual function. It will have, on the next slide, you see a low bubbler fountain that will be turned on hot days, and the nozzles will be flush with the pavement. And when it's turned off, it'll be a beautiful mosaic designed by the Chumash. We also have incorporated restrooms in the plaza. We did a lot of analyzing of where these should go and what is the best location for a restroom. And we've ended up having it right here in Stork Placida. It has 3 gender-neutral stalls. These are self-cleaning, so the outside of the stall will blend nicely with the plaza, but the inside will be these self-cleaning units. And it'll also incorporate the mechanical room, pump room for the fountain bubbler. And here's a picture, an elevation of the pavilion building. This building really helps complete the plaza in framing the plaza. It also provides a backdrop for the small stage that's in front of it and a kind of a transition between the plaza and the parking lot that's behind it. It has, we work closely with Post Hazeltine, our historians, to make sure that it's designed, located, placed in a way that honors the history of the plaza. And this building will be a multi-use building. It'll have a flexible space, it'll have a space for utilities, audio-visual, storage, the electrical panel. So it will have a lot of different purposes.
One of the messages I received loud and clear from businesses and really the property management is to figure out the trash. I don't know if you've been down there, but all of the scalloped walls are scarred because of all of the bins that need to be stored. And that helps the unfortunate feeling of it being the back of house. So one of the things we're doing is we're consolidating the trash recycling and food scraps into 2 locations, one in De La Guerra Street and one in Stork Placita, that will basically have above-ground receptacles and underground bins. And the way that works is that it would be accessed by the businesses either through a card or some sort of fob. Gives them the ability to unlock the receptacle, put their trash in, and drops down a chute into the bin. When the bin's full, Marburg comes from State Street through a hydraulic lift, brings the whole thing up. They take the bin out to State Street, empty it, put it back under, and lower it so that it's flush with the surface. Reduces a whole lot of geography problems, ADA problems, and they've been incredibly successful in Europe. We're excited to see this here in Santa Barbara.
We worked with Ann Kale and Associates to come up with a lighting plan that will increase the safety and the ambiance of the plaza as a whole. On this next slide, you can see the double head light on the left-hand side, and this is kind of our transition slide to talk about the front of the City Hall. So this project also included wrapping around in the front of City Hall with the goal to redo the City Hall so it addresses Anacapa Street and really feels like a true entrance to City Hall. So on the right-hand screen, you can see that Anacapa Street is now going to still provide some access for parking. Then there'll be a small mini plaza right in front of City Hall, a small flexible space that could be for small gatherings. And then these gardens that are around City Hall would be used for demonstration gardens. And the one at the corner the concept is to catch the runoff from the City Hall roof and then turn that one into a rain garden. You can see on this picture the 3 trees right in front of City Hall are proposed to stay. The trees that run along the side of City Hall, those are the trees that the tree committee suggested replacing with the Morkamia trees. You can also see that the 3 flags right in front, we have relocated the flags from the plaza, brought them out to the front of City Hall, created a nice sandstone wall and a nice signage to really accentuate and celebrate the entrance of that City Hall space.
So just, I know Mr. Slack will be recapping as well, but just to highlight where we're proposing to remove 49 of the 91 trees, relocate 3, protect 38 in place, and we're proposing 45 new trees. And of the 45, 23 of those are canopy trees. We'll be putting back in palms as well, because palms truly do frame buildings very well, especially in this kind of setting, without obstructing them. One other note is that the olives and the pink trumpet that we're proposing inside the plaza, the reason that those were selected with a lot of discussion with Mr. Slack and others is really that they're a medium-sized tree. They're not very dense, so that they will not only allow diffused light in, but then you'll be able to see in a way through and around them to these historic structures that we also want to celebrate. So it's a nice balance. So this is our what's next. So once our application is deemed complete, which we hope will be soon, that launches us into multiple meetings with HLC, who is our governing body. We are anticipating an environmental impact report for this project for archaeology. HLC, again, will have multiple noticed hearings, and they will give us project design approval and final approval before we get to the building department. Generally speaking, we're hoping that if all things go smoothly, we'll be in construction after Fiesta next year, so 2025. And that's our presentation. Thanks for bearing with it. I know it was a lot, but there's a lot to cover in this plaza, so thank you. We're available for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. This is exciting. It looks really pretty. So, is there any other things, Mr. Slack, from like the tree perspective before we dive into questions or comments?
Chair Feck and Commissioners, I think if there's some general questions of Brad and the architect from RRM, now would be the time to ask them, but we do want to get back and, take more of a deep dive into the recommendation from the committee.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, we have to remember that we are focused on the trees as a commission. There's a lot in there, and I mean, even my mind's like, oh my gosh, like it's so exciting to talk about this, but we're going to focus on the trees unless there's any like general comments anyone has. Otherwise, we'll just kind of dive in. Okay, so we'll go to Commissioner Chang, and this is tree related? Or, okay, you can ask your general question. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Thanks for walking us through the aesthetic considerations of this renovation. It's very exciting. Could you just talk about like the, how this project started and who's kind of how we're paying for it?
That's a great question. Chair Feck and, shoot, I'm blanking on Commissioner
Chang.
Chang, thank you. Sorry. This project started out of another project, the police station project, where the relocation of the farmers market is going to be required. This was one of the considerations for that relocation spot. That is not the location that they have selected, but it came from that idea where we were talking about raising up the level of the plaza to be one level from building to building. So that's how this project started, in that it got a lot of momentum in talking not only about the farmers market, but just the project as a whole. In terms of how it will be paid for, all of the fees at this point have been covered by Measure C as part of the infrastructure. Some of them will continue to be out of Measure C, but this will be wrapped into the bond measure funding for the police station. And we are hoping to also secure some grants once we're done with the environmental portion of this project.
Thanks, and remind me when it's supposed to be done?
I wish I could tell you.
Oh, okay.
I'm hoping to start construction in about 14 months, give or take.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, on to the trees. Okay, we'll do Commissioner Clark.
Just which, I was on the site visit with Stack. Which tree removals changed from that visit to present? Oh, got it.
Chair Feck and Commissioners, so we'll go back into the tree portion. So the initial application was for 52 removals throughout the whole project area that we just reviewed. I'll kind of walk us through from the Stork Placida to the plaza and then the front of City Hall, kind of pointing out a couple key things, including the trees that were elected for retention or relocation due to conversations on site with the project applicant and the committee. So in the Stork Placida, I guess just a general note, there was broad support from the committee in regards to the project and most of the proposed removals. The Stork Placida area was pretty straightforward in review. There was one lone windmill palm that was going to be impacted by the proposed trash enclosure that was noted to be of significant size and age, and that was requested to be relocated off-site at a location provided by the city arborist. The rest of the removals there were deemed, practical in nature. There were comments from the committee that they were thrilled to see that the 2 Mexican fan palms that were growing into the building there that we looked at as a group several months ago were kept. So those were positive comments from the committee. When you move to the plaza area and in front of the News Press building, you're looking primarily at just a bunch of queen palms. There's a large Mediterranean fan palm, a multi-stem one, that's located in front of the News Press building. That was called out for relocation as part of the project. The committee was supportive of that as well. It's also worth noting the large pepper tree, which a lot of people kind of get concerned about, the historic pepper tree out front here. That was part of the project in terms of being kept on site, so that's being protected in place. There's one lone, very old California fan palm that's located within the plaza itself. That, while it doesn't have true historic status, has been deemed historic. The HLC, or the Historic Landmarks Commission, has expressed an interest in preserving that tree. That tree is being proposed to be relocated to the front of City Hall. So they're moving that from the plaza to the front of City Hall on the Anacapa side to preserve and honor the history of that tree. There used to be a twin kind of directly across from it that was removed years and years ago. There was a lot of discussion with we call them Marchamias. It's Marchamia lutea. It's a nice large shade tree that's kind of at the corner of the plaza. It was in direct conflict with the pavilion. There were lots of discussion on site about how we could, get rid of the building or move the building into the parking lot, or all of these kind of things that we talk about at the committee level. The project applicant did a really good job of explaining the intent and purpose of the layout of the building and all of the challenges that it presented. We got creative during those discussions, and when we were viewing the proposed removals for the front of City Hall on the Anacapa side, there was discussion about trying to, in a way, kind of honor the Marchamia, because the committee was really fond of that particular tree. So there were 3 California redbuds, western redbuds, proposed for planting along the side of Anacapa. Between the committee's comments and the applicant on site, they agreed to swap out the 3 western redbuds, which are pretty small trees, and plant 2 of the Marchamia lutea, which can get to quite a good size in that area to kind of honor the legacy of the tree that will be lost with the installation of the plaza. So those were the trees that were of significance. On the other side of the plaza, directly next to City Hall, there's a historic adobe wall. It's pretty easy to miss, but it's a small wall of great historical significance. There's a large olive tree planted right next to the wall. The root flare, the buttress of the olive, has been impacting the wall over the years, and it's caused the wall to start tilting towards the City Hall parking lot side. There's concerns with continued growth and development of that tree, leading to further damage and degradation of that historic wall, potentially leading to failure because it's made of adobe, so it's very sensitive. The committee, while they didn't condition retention, did want staff to explore with Public Works to see if there's options that we can employ to try to preserve the tree in place while also preserving the wall. So those were comments made. They were not formal conditions. So that's something that Mr. Hass and I plan on working with and exploring further as the project continues to develop. As you move towards the front of City Hall, there's the giant Canary Island pine that's very close to the building. That's proposed for retention. There's also a satin tulip wood on the opposite side of the steps as you enter City Hall that's proposed for retention. That's a very unique, pretty rare species that you can't find outside of Franceschi Park, essentially, and this location in the community. So that was worth retention. As the committee reviewed the rest of the proposed removals, I think, again, it was very practical in nature. There was one small queen palm out on the Anacapa street side as a street tree that's being just essentially moved slightly, a few feet to accommodate some improvements there. There's two trees there. I think you're supposed to call them hupara. It's Pseudopanax lawsonii. The botanical name's actually easier to say than the common name, which doesn't happen too often, but there's two of those right on both sides of the City Hall steps. And the committee, when looking at the sort of that plaza design and the unique value of those trees, there was consensus that they would like to see those incorporated as part of on-site discussions. The project applicant and landscape architect said it would be fine to incorporate them. Some other comments and sort of like key notes of the discussion that took place on site was a concern for the plaza itself, which was going to be lower than the soil grade that currently exists out in front of City Hall right now, and a concern with like a loss of roots for especially the Canary Island pine and the satin tulip wood. During discussions, again, on site in front of City Hall, the new direction is to actually try to elevate the plaza up. There's a lot of space and opportunities to not really change anything, but increase the height just a little bit to minimize impacts to the existing root zones of the trees. And again, just to make reference to the loss of the Marchamia within the plaza on the side of City Hall where you're essentially along De La Guerra, there was discussion about planting those two Marchamias in lieu of the western redbuds. So after a lot of review, hours on site pretty much, the committee made a recommendation to approve the proposed removals with the condition that tree number 46 on the plans, the windmill palm, is boxed and relocated to a site determined by the city arborist, and that the landscape plan is modified to reflect the planting of the two Marchamias on the side of the main entrance to City Hall in lieu of the three western redbuds.
Okay, that's a lot.
Do we need a finding?
Yeah, we'll see.
Chair-
Commissioner
Chair-
Chang?
Chair Feck and Commissioner Chang, these are like street trees or city trees, so no finding is necessary to support the removal.
Okay, thank you. Was that your question? Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Aldana?
So on this list right here, where it says remove, you're just going to cut and remove?
Chair Feck, Commissioner O'Donnell, yeah, that table was developed to try to differentiate the trees that were removed, trees retained on site, as well as the trees that were relocated and planted, just to kind of delineate the different sort of phases of the landscape design.
Okay, because like right here, you have 21 queen palms, correct? Is that correct or not?
Chair Feck, Commissioner O'Donnell, I'm assuming that's correct if it's on the sheet. I don't have it. I'll have to
Okay,
pull it up,
it's
yeah.
a question. I mean, believe it or not, I do have a heart for palms. But we got 3 Pygmy day palms, 21 queen palms, the windmill palm, and I do like the tropical look. When we have a giant bird of paradise, you have 4. Is there any way trying to save them and relocate them? A possibility?
Chair Feck, Commissioner Aldana, I think when you look at the queen palms, that's sort of a low-hanging fruit. It's really not something that we would want to box up and relocate anywhere. You know, again, it kind of gets back to one of those previous items we looked at in terms of sort of using shade trees more than palms. I think that when you look at the quality and the maintenance demands of most of the palms on site, it's not something that we would want to try to retain and relocate to a different location in town. It is a pretty considerable amount of resources that would take from our program to try to take care of these trees if we were to relocate them. The tree that was the most significant in terms of the palms of value that was the windmill palm that is going to be relocated. And then there's the California fan palm and the Mediterranean fan palm, both of which are being relocated on the project site.
Mr. Slack and maybe the applicants could speak to the trees that are being planted as well to sort of offset the loss.
Okay, unless you want to. So Chair Feck and Commissioners, so when we look at the replacements, as Mr. Hess pointed out, roughly 50% of them will be shade trees. So there will be a lot of palms planted back as well. That was in consultation with staff. We've kind of pivoted from queens to king palms in most locations due to the maintenance demands. The fruit's a lot smaller and they just are a little bit more well-behaved in the area. So I think you still will, as well as in front of the news press, some of those palm removals are being done, or 715 Anna Kappa LLC, if I got that right. Some of the palm removals there are being done to re-emphasize the historical nature of the architecture. So they're taking these palms out to put them in key spots. So you still have that palm look, but they're highlighting the historic features of the building as well. So I think you'll see a really nice blend overall of what's being proposed between trees that provide shade and good environmental benefits, but still have, you know, a lot of palms. And De La Guerra, for example, is going to be a plaza in and of itself that's populated entirely with palm trees.
Mm-hmm. And one last question. I work on a property that has hundreds, maybe thousands of kencha palms, and I noticed they're very slow growing. Was there any consideration of any slow growing kencha palms?
Chair Feck and Commissioner Aldana, if I'm not mistaken, Kentia is classified as medium water use, and that was why they were not looked at for the project, but I'm not 100% certain. So there's as these projects go through the review process, everything has to conform to the water use classification system. We call it WCALS, is the abbreviation, and everything needs to check the low water use requirement, and I think that Kentia might not check that box. I'm not 100% certain though.
Commissioner Chang. Okay. Any other comments or questions, concerns? Okay. Okay, let's go for a motion.
I move that we follow the recommendation of the committee to approve the proposed removals on two conditions. One, that we preserve and transplant tree number 46, the windmill palm, to an off-site location to be determined by the city arborist. And two, modify the landscape plan to reflect the planting of 2 Nile tulip trees on the site of City Hall in place of the 3 proposed western redbuds.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we've got a second. Any discussion? All right, may we have a vote, please? Oh, wait, is there any public comment? Well, I don't have any speaker slips, but anybody online wishing to speak?
There is no one online.
Okay, now we can do a vote then. Thank you. All right, it's approved. Thank you all for your hard work, and we're excited to see this come to reality, so thank you. Okay, that concludes our trees. Thank you, Mr. Slack. Director's report.
Chair Feck and Commissioners, we have a few things to share with you this month. If you recall, last month you had an extensive presentation on our adapted recreation program and all the different offerings that it provides. We're happy to report that the Spring Fling Dinner Dance was successful, and that was held a few weeks ago at the Westside Neighborhood Center. We had 75 members of the community attend, with their families. And in addition to dancing to music, the event included dinner. And I'll jump down and talk about the youth chef apprentice program, but it was a nice marrying of our two programs, adapted plus the youth that are learning to become budding chefs, hopefully, were able to cater and support that event. You also heard at our last one that we initiated our summer registration early this year. We're happy to report that that's going pretty darn well, but with that, we have to initiate the process to hire the staff. We do a pretty significant hourly staff recruitment process every single year. It's a big priority of our recreation supervisors and coordinators so that we're ready once the summer season begins. Not only that we've recruited the staff, we've hired them, they've gone through their training, and they're basically ready to move forward in their jobs as soon as these events occur. Both community events, because we have lots of staff monitors, but also our recreation programs, and then facility rentals. So there's more activity when it gets warmer and sunnier, and so we need staff to support that. We employed just over 218 last year. We anticipate we will have that many and maybe a little bit more this year. And also really want to emphasize that summer employment can often be the first job experience that these young people get. So we consider ourselves a training organization, an organization that helps youth begin whatever career they might have. It may not be in recreation, but they learn the responsibility of having a summer job and actually being part of a program where they're delivering a service to the community. We also, in fact it's going on right now because it is spring break, offer lifeguard certification programs, and part of that is to improve the community's water safety, as well as to improve the pool of qualified applicants that we can have and serve as lifeguards. And that's one of the challenges that we face. Ideally, we have staff come back each summer, and often that can be the case, but we always need to be planning for the next recruitment of staff and building that staff over the season. We have courses here at spring break and then on Memorial Day weekend, and then we also have tryouts for beach lifeguard and junior guards that are held in April, followed by pool lifeguard tryouts and the academy in May and June. Your staff report includes where those open positions can be reviewed, so I won't read it out. But it's a key initiative that we have, and we work really closely both internally but also with our human resources staff to process a couple hundred people is pretty significant. You were part of the last Youth Speak Out outcome, which is the Safe Firearms Ordinance, and you heard a report this evening that the Youth Council was awarded yet another Youth Making Change grant from the Fund for Santa Barbara, and they are planning to host their next Speak Out on April 13th. It will be at the Palm Park Beach House from 11 to 1 p.m., and attending students that are being invited are between the ages of 13 and 19. The Chef Apprentice graduation, I think we talked a little bit about that recently as well, and you should have a paper invitation as well as receive something through our invite. The Chef Apprentice graduation will be held on April 13th as well, so it's going to be a busy day at the Westside Center. We've got 28 students participating this year, 10 that have been going to the Franklin Center, and 18 that have been attending at the Westside Center. And we have a really broad cross-section of high school students that are represented this year, which is great to see as well, because these are kids that may not see each other at school or may not even live in the same neighborhood with each other. So I won't go through the list of everything that's the option, but we really do hope that if you're available and able to attend, that you will RSVP. And just quickly, as in prior years, the program is co-sponsored with Jolly Brothers Catering Company, coordinated by Chef Donald Hardin and Anita Dominicello Ho, and we have Troy Peters, who's a local graduate of the Culinary Arts program, that have come back and are really the backbone, frankly, of this program. We have staff that are involved, but really without that leadership and that vision and that commitment to work with the youth, we wouldn't be able to put this program on. With that, happy to answer any questions that you might have, and hope to see you at one of the upcoming events.
Awesome. Any questions, comments? No? I'll just say I worked for Parks and Rec in the summer, like when I was in school, and it was like the best job ever. I had so much fun. So I think it's like a great experience for people. So I'm like, if I could work during the summers there too, I would, but cool. Well, that brings us, do you have something? Commissioner Chang?
Yeah, I am curious about the marketing here. You know, we've brought it up a few times. Are we getting marketing in non-English languages? Spanish specifically?
Chair Feck and Commissioner Chang, it depends on the program. We're actually, when we do our outreach, we do it in a variety of methods. And depending on the type of program and the outreach, we do it in 2 languages. One of the key considerations that we have is making sure that we can communicate with a parent. And if we have a parent that is not bilingual and they have a child in one of our summer camps, that poses a challenge for us if we don't also have a bilingual staff member. So we're slowly moving towards trying to see the extent to which we can ensure we have at least 1 or 2 staff members for every single program if we have a child who may have a parent who does not communicate in English. And that's really the challenge that we have when it comes to ensuring that we can attract a broad cross-section of youth throughout our programs. Our summer fun program, we absolutely know that we have parents that do not necessarily speak or feel confident speaking English, and we have staff that can speak Spanish and be able to call them in the case of an emergency.
Thanks for your effort on this.
All right, well, that takes us, there's no old business, no new business, so we can adjourn. 5:33. Our next meeting will be April 24th. And we're adjourned, and so I'll also make an announcement to everybody. I am expecting a baby in August. It will be June of this year.